Welcome back to ManaTutor MTG. We are doing a retro today. We're taking a look at all the commons in this episode through all the different Wooburg colors and looking at which cards that we maybe called a little bit off compared to where it sat in win rate. We have on the screen here, you will see our grades that we went through from our initial set review before the set even came out. And on the right-hand side, you will see a distribution of the win rates of commons across all the different colors and what kind of grade that settles in when grading. And we didn't take like a strict approach of the win rate against the grade that we gave, but we did pick out some good examples that I thought would just be interesting to discuss, and we'll be walking through our thoughts and kind of trading off back and forth about those cards, and we'll start with white. So first to start, we have Fog on the Barrow Downs highlighted here. We gave that as a C-. I see down here that is a D. So we weren't like horribly off or anything, but I think it is notable that in a lot of sets where there are sacrifice synergies or means to punish this type of enchantment removal, it goes down, right? And I think this set had enough of that going on that it was a little lower than it would otherwise be. I mean, in a way, this was kind of asking for it being a pacifism plus, a 3-mana pacifism when that's usually like a 2-mana type of thing. So it had it already kind of going against it. But basically, bad removal is still bad. What are your thoughts, Matt?
No, I agree completely. And, I think this kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other things we may have underestimated as the set came out. I think in a previous episode, we did an apology for Voracious Fellbeast, right? Like thinking that was not going to be as good as it is in the set, and it's very good, right? And so, again, it just goes hand in hand, right? Like, okay, if you're playing white-black and you play this on somebody and then you play Voracious Fellbeast, well, yeah, they're just going to sacrifice the thing that's been targeted with this. So it didn't really serve a purpose at that point. I think it's like you said, it's a more expensive pacifism that doesn't really accomplish much. And yeah, so I think this one we called a little bit better than it was. It's certainly not an F, but it's filler, right?
Yep.
So next up we have Hobbit Sting. And you gave this a synergy C-. I gave this a synergy B-. I'm looking at the win rates on it and on 17 lands and stuff. It's actually up there as far as the white commons are. So it's got a 55.2% win rate. I think it shows up as a C on your screen there. I'm not sure this one was so much as of a bad call as it was that it can play its decent white removal in even when you're not necessarily trying to synergize.
Right.
I think it's certainly better in a food deck, and if you've got enough food generators, right, it goes up in value. But yeah, I mean, it's something that it was certainly playable in most white decks, right? And is playable in most white decks. It's not the best removal out there, but it's probably the best removal white has to offer.
Right.
That's where I would go with it. What do you have?
Yeah, I actually highlighted this more to note that this was better than I thought it was, type of thing. The grade like C- to C. You gave it a B-. Like the differentials, like sometimes can be a little bit misinforming. This performed slightly better than I thought it would, and it in aggressive decks that are going to have a lot of creatures, this type of effect is pretty good. So in your like red-white aggro deck, this was a pretty darn good card. This also synergized a bit with some of White's commons like East Farthing Farmer that created the food, and I think the food effect of East Farthing Farmer brought that up more than I thought it would otherwise be. So that's all I really want to call out. Cheap removal in aggro decks with this type of effect can be pretty decent. Uh, not B range, but a good card.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Nimble Hobbit. I don't actually quite. Oh, I think this was just. I forget what you thought on the Synergy C plus. I think this was a yeah, had to do with the synergy of like tapping something down for an aggro deck or something. That didn't quite
Well,
pan
no,
out.
because you can use a food, right? So for me, it was the synergy of if you sacrifice food, right, to tap something down. And so again, I thought this would synergize a little bit better in a food deck, and
Right.
it just turns out that it's just a bad card. I'm looking at the win rate right now. It's the second worst common at 51.8%.
Yeah.
So it's pretty bad. Again, is it something you never play? Probably not, but it's something if you have anything better to play. And the other thing I think is there's so many other good or better two drops
Yeah.
than that, right? I think the other reason I may have given it a synergy is because it's actually an okay ring bearer,
Mm-hmm.
but there are also just so many other better ring bearers than it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it turned out was overestimating that one quite a bit.
Yeah, I think so. The whole point of this is kind of to see the different like stories to do better in the future, and I think there are cases like where we trust the synergies too much that can bias us, but. At the same time, I think even our set review, we said a lot of like, let's trust Wizards. They did the test on the synergies, give them the benefit of the doubt, and try to grade some cards that look like they fit those synergies higher than they would look on paper, because it's really hard to judge without playing what those synergies are going to act out like. And it's really sometimes you do trust them, sometimes you don't. Like blue green was horrible. There was a lot of scry related strategies, and I bet you when we go over blue and green, we're going to see a lot of that. Like, oh, we gave them the benefit of the doubt, and we're like, oh, we shouldn't have. But I think a case where the synergy that you called more right than I did is on the ring mechanic in general. Even after week one, I was still like, I don't think ring is playing out that huge, and it didn't, because people still didn't quite get the synergies after week one until later in the set, and it became really like the best decks were ring temp decks if you can get them with 7+ tempted by the ring cards.
Yeah.
So like it's interesting to it's hard to judge those kind of mechanics, and I think this one's also interesting to compare against Pelagear Survivor, which is also 2 mana 1/3, and like the
Yeah.
difference there. Ones that really play into synergies that are very well supported versus those that are not well supported. I think we did call out right. The food strategy was not good. And I think maybe moving
Yes.
forward in our grades, we should trust ourselves on that end and say, like, okay, because we don't really believe in the food strategy, we're not going to give Wizards the benefit of the doubt, and this kind of just acts like a 2 mana 1/3.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. And we did say we didn't think food would be particularly big, and I'll be honest, food has won me games. Right, there are times where gaining that life was the difference between winning and losing. But more often than not, I think, and we kind of said this early on, is like against an aggro deck, food's not going to save you.
Yeah.
And so it shouldn't be like your win strat, right? Particularly because there's no cards where like if you have X life you win the game or something like that, like to build towards, right? With that, it's just you're spending mana and money or to get food, right? Like you're spending resources to get that life that you could be spending on playing other cards, right? So yeah, anyways.
Yeah, I think 2 resources to spend on something is a lot of resources, and one
Yes.
is quite low, right? Like that. I think we've kind of learned a lot about that with the difference of land cyclers in different sets. There was land cyclers in March of the Machine, and it
Yeah.
was a
But
two
they were
mana.
two.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
way different than 1 mana. Keeping in mind the synergies where you pay 1 mana for something versus 2 mana in the future, also I think is a big breaking point of whether that synergy is good or not.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so next up we have Now for Wrath, Now for Ruin. This is another one where I think I just owe an apology, right? I thought this card was going to be really good in kind of like a white weenie aggro type situation where it was going to let you basically, it's like a mini overrun in a lot of ways, but it just didn't play out that way most of the time. Now, that said, I've won games, including when we did our live paper draft, right, together with that card, right? But that doesn't mean that, again, it's more the exception than the rule, right? So I certainly overestimated this card. Again, looking at the win rates, it's at a 52% game in hand win rate. So it's not high, right? It's not it's not the thing that makes the difference. And I think part of it is really just how expensive it is as a card. If you're playing in a white weenie deck or like a red-white aggro deck or something like that, you don't want to spend 4 mana on this card. You'd rather play you'd rather play Relentless Rohirrim, right? Or you'd rather play, Shadowfax or something like that for that kind of mana cost that's going to help you really win the game versus like this, which might, but more often than not, is just going to be a temporary boost. So
Yeah.
Anyways,
I think this
that's
card.
my thoughts on it.
Yeah, this card, this type of card, the go wide, pump up for the big swing at the end to kill the opponent, is a common strategy in a lot of sets, but it usually would come with like +2 power at least everything, and sometimes comes with that and trample. So 4 mana for a really underpowered version just doesn't quite get there. Yeah, that's basically what there is on this.
Yeah. The thing is, I was comparing this to kind of other cards like Storm the Seed Core, which was a few sets back, which is 4+1, or distribute 4+1/+1 counters on up to 4 target creatures, and they all gain trample and vigilance until end of turn, right?
Yeah.
But that one's actually significantly better, right? Because you get the trample, the vigilance, and their counters. Right, or does this give counters, or is it just +1/+1 till end of turn? I can't even remember.
It's a counter. It's a counter, yeah.
Oh, it's a counter? Okay. Yeah, so it's similar in ways to things like Storm the Seed Core. But I think I don't actually think it's as good, so.
Yeah, well, this one, so Storm the Seed Core, first of all, I think what ended up being overrated in Limited, and it actually was like, it was an okay card. It wasn't great. And also, that has more flexibility than this. Like, this one is kind of like, if you are winning, then you can win, right? Like, the best case is good for this card, but the average case, or the case where you're losing, this will not turn you around, right?
Oh, yeah, no, it's, like quadrant theory, the whole quadrant theory of this, right? It's, this is good if you're already ahead, but it's not going to be good in like the establishing phase of the game. It's not going to be good if you're behind. So, 100%.
Moving on to Second Breakfast. Honestly, there might not be a whole lot to say about this. It was just the worst card.
It's the worst card in the set, or in the. I don't know if it's the worst card in the set. It's the worst card of the white commons. It's probably in the running for worst card in the set.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, I think we rated this even more generously than we should have, just based on the idea that, well, yeah, in a food deck this might not be bad, but no, it wasn't good.
I really think 3 mana tricks are really tough to justify. Like your tricks to be cheap. When we get into black, we'll talk a little bit more about that with Shelif's Ambush for sure. But yeah, 3 is a tough call.
Yeah. So next,
yep, go ahead.
We have Slip on the Ring next. So this one, I'm still not sold on this card not being particularly good. I've definitely used this card to great advantage in a number of situations. It's a great way to prevent somebody from destroying a creature you really want to save. And it also gives you a ring tempt, which, again, I think is one of those situations that has become more valuable over the course of the set. And so I'm not entirely convinced that where it is where the card should be. But again, if we're relying on the data, right, the data says this card's a 53% game in hand win rate. It's not particularly good. But anyways,
I think the key there is holding up 2 mana when you aren't sure what your opponent's going to do. This is a reactive card, right?
yes,
So
100%.
so if this was 2 mana kill something, like that's a great card, right? So like the opposite of 2 mana save something though requires you to know that your opponent's going to try to kill it, and then for you to save mana to
Yeah.
in order to protect that. So it's just it it's kind of expensive for what you're trying to do. Like a save effect would usually be something like 1 mana. Now you get the ring temps, and
Yeah.
you get this where this really would shine is enter the battlefield effects, right?
Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah. Yeah. East Farthing Farmer. It's really great with East Farthing Farmer, actually.
yeah, even
Right.
more so like Aaron Rider Gondor or
Yeah. Oh yeah. Aaron Rider of Gondor. Yeah. No. There's a number of of those. My actually key case use of it that I actually pulled off in a game, and I'm really proud of this. Is I was playing a red white splash blue deck, and I used it on Bilbo. Right. Yeah. And so it was an instant level 4 ring, right? Because I got level 1 when he came into play. I played this, this resolved, so that's level 2. Bilbo leaves the battlefield, that's level 3. Bilbo re-enters the battlefield, that's level 4. So I was instantly at level 4 ring off of just 2 cards. Again, that's not going to happen often.
Yeah, it's like the best enters and leaves the battlefield card in the set.
Exactly, right?
But yes, yeah.
Or I also have used this on a Voracious Fellbeast, which was great, right? Because then it is 2 mana removal, right? Yeah. And so there are a number of cases where I think this can shine, but and also I'll say this, when I play white, I actually don't necessarily discount this card because there is so much good removal in the set, and I tend to assume that in any given draft where I'm playing potentially up to 7 games, probably half of those games are going to be against black or red at least, and I'm going to need this or want something like this to potentially protect my creatures. So yeah. Anyways, I do feel good about where I rated the card. I do think that it's not necessarily lived up to its expectation.
Yeah, I'm with you on this card has a place. I think you are hurting your win rate if you have never played this card. Whereas Nimble Hobbit, I never played, and I don't think I'm hurting my win rate.
I've never played Nimble Hobbit.
So yeah, no, I'm with you, and I think this show is right. This is like good filler, D plus type of range. So that's where I think it belongs, and your points kind of echo that.
Yeah.
Then we have Stalwarts of Osgoliath, and this one's just interesting that it was all the way up here at C. And I see where it's coming from. So anything that when it said enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you was turned out to overperform. And then the drawing your second card, I mean, with the ring tempt effect, like that happened far more often than in a normal set, right? So you kind of have like a 5 mana, 5/4 ring tempts you card to start. I still don't think I've ever actually played this card, and the reason is whenever I wanted to do this thing, I always had the 5/4 red creature that when it dies it gives you a 2/2, the War Beast of Gorgoroth.
Yeah.
And which I thought was better. So it kind of suffered in my mind from, being a 5-drop, you don't want too many type of thing. But maybe this was even better than the War Beast.
I think it's absolutely better than War Beast. I'll just say because of that ring temp, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what really makes it good. Like I put this card kind of this card for me is on par with Relentless Rohirrim. Relentless Rohirrim costs 1 less, right? But this has the added effect. I mean, they're the same power toughness to start, but this has that added effect of if you're at level 2 ring every turn, ideally this is going to get stronger.
Yeah.
And so as the game goes on, unless they've got premium removal for it, so I'm Claim the Precious or something like that, because as soon as this hits the board and you get a +1/+1 counter on it, it is now not targetable by a number of removal spells, right? Because it'll be a 5/4, right?
Yeah,
but
Smite the Deathless or anything like that.
Smite the Deathless won't kill it. I mean, now you can still use like improvised club or something like that, but it gets to the point that it's difficult to deal with pretty quick.
Yeah.
I will say this is another card where, using something like going back to Slip on the Ring, right? This is not necessarily the worst thing to use Slip on the Ring unless it's already got a bunch of counters on it, in which case you don't want to do that. But, it's one of those things where that ETB effect might be worth it. So anyways, yeah, I think it's a good card, and I've definitely played it a couple of times, and I usually find better things to put in. Like, I'd much rather play a Shadowfax over this, or I'd much rather play a
Aomer.
Maybe even an Aomer or an Eagles even sometimes over this, right? But I've definitely found space for it.
Yeah, I just found I haven't, but then again, most of my decks that would want this kind of effect, I was mostly red-white, and I actually played my red-white mostly towards the low end of Tempt.
Sure.
So,
more aggro, less, because I think there's two good versions of the red-white deck. One is just pure aggro, kill somebody as fast as possible. The other is the Tempt strategy, where you're playing Rohirrim Lancers, Relentless Rohirrim, other like things like this that will get you to that level 4, so that you can basically make something very hard to block.
Right, but I guess my learning here is you gotta decide what your synergies like. Is it gonna matter or not? That's what I underrated. It's the Ring Tempt that makes that card great, and or as good as it is, and I underestimated that.
Sure.
All right.
So moving on to blue. First up, we have Bewitching Leechcraft. So this was one of those situations where I think we both probably rated this a little higher than it should have been. It's certainly down towards the bottom end of blue cards in the D range. So, it's not great removal for the same reason we talked about with Fog on the Barrow Downs, right? It's one of those things that enchantment removal, I mean, at least this one does only cost 2 versus Fog on the Barrow Downs costing 3. So this is more like a pacifism. But it's still not great compared to other forms of removal. And this might be one of the, this is really kind of the only permanent removal that blue has. And that might be one of the reasons we rated it a little bit higher, I think, than was deserved for it. But the lesson remains, right? Enchantment removal is not particularly great.
Right, and I think enchantment removal is better in decks that are aggro and want to finish the game quickly, because they don't have as much opportunity to cash in on the fact that you had that lingering permanent around. And blue does not play aggro. Well, like, I know blue-red can, again, technically have an aggro version, but I don't, that's not enough. You want everything else. You want other spells in your deck, and not Bewitching Leechcraft for that particular deck. So this didn't really have a deck that it fit into. It is serviceable, I think, if you absolutely don't have removal and don't have another good card to put on in, but you really are looking to play anything else.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Birthday Escape, the top performing common. So this one was interesting. I remember when we did grade this, we gave it the grade we said because we said it was not a high pick. That turns out to be wrong. I do think this is a pretty high pick. It fits in every single deck because it leaves you open. But we did say that this will play out higher than what we're giving the grade. I specifically remember this card. We said that.
I think so.
And so I don't think right. we were wrong on that. Where I think we were wrong is like how important the Ring tempts you is, and just cycling through instants and sorceries for every single blue deck. how important that is.
Yeah. No, 100%. And agree, totally with what you said. And I think we kind of, we did say it, but I think even then we underrated this, right? Like this is easily top blue common. Looking at, it's got a 60% game in hand win rate, right? So, that's not to say that, it does in fact always help you win the game, but the fact that you can move through your deck, playing this, and we did the episode on red blue, right? This really shines in basically every formulation of red blue, both the aggro version and the control version, because it lets you move through things. Particularly in the aggro version, though, with Erebor Flamesmith, with I forget the name of the enchantment off the top of my head, but the one that deals 2 damage whenever you cast instant or sorcery. This is just great for that, right? It's a shock. Like it's fantastic, and I think we definitely underestimated that.
Yeah. This is just great with Fire Inscription was the enchantment you're
Fire
thinking
Inscription,
of.
yes, that's the one I'm thinking of.
But yeah, it's great with that. It's great with Gandalf Sanction. It does everything that you want it to do in blue. So not every set will have not every set has the red white support, but or red blue support. But in sets that really are spells heavy, they really do tend to like this kind of effect, and I think we'll have to keep our eye out on that because I think we did call out red blue as also having quite a bit of support as well.
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily called the Fiery Inscription deck, but I think we did call Gandalf Sanction would be pretty decent.
Flame of Honor.
Yeah,
which is also, is also a pretty good card if you can pull it off. But yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So next up we have Deceive the Messenger. And this card, again, I think this was another one where we underrated it, right? And it's easy. I think it was easy to underrate, right? Because when you look at it on its face, like giving something -3, -0, and creating an orc, right? But the real use case for this came to kill anything with 1 toughness, right? So this was like one of those situations where, oh look, somebody rallies at the Hornburg and attacks you. Congrats! Now you kill one of their rallies and you have a 1/1 to block the other one on the next turn. Or somebody plays like the Westfold Rider, right? The one that's a 3/1, right? This just outright kills that. There's so many good use cases for being able to make something not be able to deal damage, and then your 1/1 that you create with this can kill it. Or at the very least, it can block it. Or you can use this on something else and then get a chump blocker to block 2, right? So you basically block 2 of your opponent's creatures this way, or prevent 2 creatures from dealing damage. So there's just a number of good use cases for this. And again, it really shines in those decks that are trying to get instant and sorcery spells into graveyard or cast because it costs 1 mana. So yeah, I think we definitely underrated this.
Yeah, agreed. I think this also has especially good use case in this set in that 1/1s mattered so much as potential ring bearers. So the value of getting a 1/1 for 1 and doing everything you just said combined really helps this, and it especially pairs quite well with the next card that we have up that I definitely underrated.
One more thing on this one that I think is a fun use case for it that I've done is doing it on my own creature so I could block a ring bearer.
I've done that too. Oh, actually, I've done it on my own creature to get an unblocked ring bearer and then minus the damage. So
yeah, there's some fun use cases for it that I think we didn't really talk about. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and that won me the game when I did mine. I don't know about yours, but like so the case mattered quite a bit. I can't remember whether
it won me the game or not, but it was a fun thing to do, right? Because they assumed that I couldn't block their ring bearer, right? Because I didn't have anything, and I was like, well, I'll just do this, and now I can block and kill your ring bearer. So congratulations, because it was like a 2/2 or something, and I had like a 5/5, I think it was, or something like that, and I made it a 2/5 or whatever. So it worked out, right? But it's not always going to be that way. It's just, it was fun. But anyways, yeah, Dreadful as the Storm. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dreadful as a Storm. This type of card, I still think usually does not play that great unless it does something also great like draw you a card. There are versions of this type of card that draw you a card, and those played out pretty well in your standard set. But given the ring tempts you and that whole mechanic and what blue-red specifically needed, a lot of the time was the unblockable, like the fact that you can do this on an unblockable creature and just pump it up there, and then it also comboed well with the mass, and that the base power and toughness is 5/5, and then just the rest are +1/+1 counters. It had enough versatility in the context of the set to really matter, and I did not pick up on that. Your grade indicates you picked up a bit more on that one than I did. But yeah, it's a good card in that synergistic deck. Yep.
Yeah, and I'll take credit for, I feel like, calling this one a little bit better. I didn't know that it would be a good combat trick, but I suspected it would be a good combat trick for all the reasons you just said, right? Like, there's a number of circumstances where if you've got a level 3 ring bearer that they can't block, that, hey, now you play this and you're going to be dealing 4 extra damage to them, and they're going to lose 3 life, right? So that's 7 extra damage for 3 mana, right? It ended up, I think, even surprising me in how versatile it could be, right? Like, this card with Pelargir Survivor is really great. Yep. Because it's great defensively, because it effectively costs 2 mana when you're using a Pelargir to cast it, and then it makes your Pelargir much better. And so as a blocker, right? Or, it's actually really great, right, to block ring bearers, right? Like, so your opponent attacks with a 1/1 ring bearer, let's say a 2/2 ring bearer, and all you've got is like a Pelargir Survivor, right? Okay, well, congratulations, now you're killing their ring bearer, and you get a ring bearer. So yeah, I always kind of thought it would be good, but I've found uses for it, I think, that I didn't even expect.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, one thing that I had as a takeaway from previous sets that I applied here that I want to pat myself on the back for is the using data to tell you when you're wrong, right? Like, I just at first flagged this as not a great card, one I'm never looking to play. And then the data indicated something was up with this. It was winning way more than I would have expected, which indicates, okay, I'm wrong. I need to figure out in what deck this would work well in. And then I did, before hearing people talk about it, thought this would be well in the blue-red deck. Now, I didn't really get a chance to really draft that deck very much to use it until it was out. But keeping in mind when something's winning at a much higher rate, there's a reason why it wins high. If something is low, it could be because people aren't playing it right. But if something's winning higher than you expect, that's usually an indicator that something is up that you don't know.
Yes, 100%.
Up next, we have Isolation at Orthink, which was... where here? That should be somewhere up... Yep, okay. Right there.
It's in the middle.
B minus.
Upper mid, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was just a bit better than we had graded. I think...
Well, a little bit better than you graded. I graded it a D, so...
Yeah. This type of effect has always been decent in Limited. I think people... like, the undergrading it is very normal because it's not straight removal, but it kind of is, and that they have to redraw the card. And I do think it benefits quite a bit from being second from the top, so they don't redraw it right away. And it benefits for, sometimes this card gives the option. Sometimes it's like second from the top or at the bottom of your library. Like the opponent can choose. So you might just get rid of a card they don't really need that much, and they could draw something else. The fact that they don't get the option makes this even better than what we typically see for this card. So it also benefits from it being an instant with all the blue wanting instants and sorceries. Yeah, I'm not overly surprised to see this as a B minus. I never would see myself... I do think it gets pulled up by the win rate of blue. Like, going into the set, even if I knew this was going to be good, I still wouldn't call this a slight draw into blue. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't think we were necessarily horribly off. I think it's biased by the color win rate. Yeah, that's what I have to say. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I still don't love this card because for 4 mana and holding up 4 mana is never something I really want to do. Like, even in a control situation, I'm typically not wanting to hold up 4 mana to play this kind of removal. Like, I would and this is borne out in the data too, right? But, like, I'd much rather play Soothing a Smeagol, than this, even though Soothing a Smeagol only returns at the hand. So, I mean, and Soothing a Smeagol, I believe, is non-token creature, so there's a limitation for that as well. You can't target their army, whereas this can kill an army. But the data does bear out that it's a pretty good card, right? So I think I need to kind of readjust my heuristic there to really comprehend why that's the case. But I mean, I still don't love it as a card.
Yeah,
right?
I think a big one that really does help with this win rate is Amass, and the fact this is removal for a big Amass token. And big Amass tokens were a thing, like the blue-black deck really tried to pile on a big Amass token, and if you can get rid of that, you really hurt their strategy. So I think it benefits a lot from that. I'm still actually taking this over Soothing a Smeagol personally, but I guess Soothing, when you get into the ring tempt aggro version, you do want that one more. I just think isolation leaves it a little bit more open, which is why I take it earlier. But
yeah. So next up we have Ithilien Kingfisher. So this one is one of those ones that I think we overrated just a little bit, not crazily. Because I think it's at a C-.
Yep.
And we gave it a C+, C. It's one of those ones that I still think it's a pretty decent card in white, or in white blue particularly, but in most blue situations I probably wouldn't play it in blue red, but it's still, I think, a really good card in white blue, where drawing that second card is something that you want to do. And it potentially presents a way to do that, or it presents a way to get extra damage in if they don't want to block it, so you can draw that second card, or something along those lines. But yeah, I think we did overrate it a little bit, but still, the card draw mechanic is good, and I think that was my major takeaway for this card is that there are very few situations where it is a bad pick.
Right.
Right. Have the option to have a creature that you can put out that will replace itself when it dies. Right. I think there were, this is certainly not Inspiring Overseer. Right. It's not that card, but it's still a decent card. So what do you think?
To some degree, I highlighted this because I think we kind of did call it a little bit right, and it has jumped all over the place and been highly debated, because people are used to seeing this type of effect as an Expiring Overseer, and it's not, right? The dies trigger is a lot worse than the Enter the Battlefield trigger, but it's still something that's decent there. This would be horrible if it was a 2/1 flyer for 3 and that's it, right?
Yes.
And with that, I think we kind of roughly called this right. I might be a little bit high on the C+. But that's really all I want to say about that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Up next, we have Knights of Dol Amroth. We had this as we were quite different on this one for D+ and C+.
Yeah.
And
you got it right, and I didn't, right?
Yeah. So maybe you want to go over what you were thinking on that one and what you learned about this.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking this was similar to Stalwarts of Osgiliath, right? I mean, it is functionally a very similar card in a lot of ways. The key difference here, right, I think, is that it does not have the ring tempt in the same way, right? And that turns out that's a really important part of it. And so, it's not terrible, but I definitely think I overrated it, right? So what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I underrated the white one, the Stalwarts, because of the ring tempt. I got it right that the base card was not right, and I got it wrong that ring tempt didn't matter that much, because it definitely did.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, I thought it was going to be that situation, right, where you got the ring temp mechanic, and as soon as you get to level 2 ring temp, you're going to be putting a +1/+1 counter on this thing every turn, and it's going to be good. The key difference is this card doesn't help you get there, right? Whereas Stalwarts of Osgiliath very much does. And so, yeah.
Yep.
Even though Stalwarts of Osgiliath is more mono, right?
Yep.
I also think this, one more thing I'll say about this one real quick, is I think this one also suffers from being in the wrong color. And that is because in blue, there are less opportunities, I think, unless you are specifically playing blue-white, which is not a particularly strong archetype. It is not particularly good, right? Like, you wouldn't want to play this in blue-red, right? You're not going to care about this in blue-red. Blue-black, you're not going to care about this card. Green-blue, you're not going to care about this card because it doesn't scry. So there's one specific archetype in which this card is okay, and that's not a very strong archetype.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
So yeah, next up we have Lorien Revealed, which we put pretty much middle of the pack, C minus, and I think this is one of those ones that ended up being a little bit better than we thought, but I do think we got it, mostly right. This ends up being a C, kind of in those ratings, right? It's in the 58% win rate. So I think we got this one pretty right. I was still surprised by it, right, in that it was better than I thought in most circumstances. The ability to cycle has been pretty big in most games I've played, right? Like, especially when you're just trying to splash that color for a legendary that you want to play, having that ability. I think I used it less in blue than any other color, but even then, Lorien Revealed is just a good card, right? And it's hard to find a bad use case for being able to draw cards, right? So.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I do think this gets raised by the power of blue, but it is quite versatile. Beginning of the set, I was trumpeting how good the cycling cards are. I still believe that. I don't believe they're as high picks as they were before, because now we know how to funnel yourself into like a particular archetype a little bit more. So, and you know exactly what cards are good in that archetype, whereas these kind of left you open to steal the cards that were underdrafted early on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I do think the power level did even change throughout the course of the metagame. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh.
Up next, we have Pelagear Survivor. This is one we both got wrong.
Yes.
1-3 for 2. Generally, not a great card. I'm not a fan of this type of thing. It's not that it's horrible. I just, for my 2 mana things, I usually want to have more power than toughness. Even
you want the Westfold.
I'd rather have a Westfold Rider variant.
3-1.
But in a set of 1/1s that can just block that, and in a set that that has the ring bearer mechanic, you really want the toughness more than power. And so this played under all of that, and this helped further exactly what blue wanted to do when casting instants and sorcery. So, and the mill effect comes into play sometimes too for your black.
I've lost to this card. Yep. I've absolutely lost to getting milled by this card more than one time, and it's embarrassing, but it happens. So, yeah, I don't really have anything to add. Again, we called this one wrong. But it just goes to show, right? Like, and we talked about this earlier, like the difference between this and Nimble Hobbit, right? Same power toughness, same CMC, but the effect really does matter here. And this is just loads better in terms of its versatility than that card. So,
speaking of cards we got wrong, do you want to go into Soothing a Smeagol?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a great one. We both got this one horribly wrong, right? This is the third best common in blue. And 59% win rate basically, and we rated this an F. So I do think again it was partially in our defense, underestimating the importance of ring temp, right? This is because we basically both looked at this and said this is a more expensive unsummon, and you can't even target a token with it. So But it turns out that's a pretty good mechanic. Especially when there are so many really good legendary creatures. It's pretty good when you want to get that extra ring tempt in. It is an instant and sorcery for the Spells Matter deck, red blue. So yeah, there's a whole number of use cases we didn't really factor in, I think, when we rated this. But yeah, what do you think?
I do think this card also gets a little bit of a bump, not only being in blue, but being in the best version of blue-red.
Mm.
Like, I don't think people are playing this card when they're not trying to do the ring tempt, because then you have an expensive unsummon that can only target non-token things, right? You're only
Yes.
playing this in the tempt version, where that's like one of the best decks in the set, blue-red tempt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You get some birthday escapes. Dreadful as the storm or two, and you're on your way, right?
Yeah, so to some degree, I don't think we got wrong what this card does. I think we just specifically got wrong the how much the ring tempt is useful when you're going all out on it, and that can raise a card like this, a cheap ring tempt, just like Birthday Escape for that matter, way up.
Yeah.
And yeah, but this one, I like I've said, I'm still picking Isolation or Think over this, because this one you have to specifically be that blue-red ring tempt deck.
Or a ring temp deck, right?
Or a ring temp deck, yes.
Yeah. Because there are other formats you could use for it, right? You could do a blue-black ring temp, right? Where I could see this being played, but yeah, you want that ring temp, right? So
Okay.
all right. So last up, we have Surrounded by Orcs, and this is the worst common in the set, or sorry, the worst common in the color, right? And we, to be fair, I'll take the fact that I rated this a D minus and call that okay. But it definitely turned out to be even worse than I thought it would be generally. It's I think this has it at what, a D, right? In
Yep.
the ratings,
D
right?
minus.
So
You
D minus.
called it
Okay.
exact.
I called it exactly. Okay, great. But yes, I mean it is. It's bad, right? There's not much else to say about it. It's bad.
I think I have an interesting
Since you're
take
the
on
one
this
who
one.
put it in synergy. Yeah, I'll let you.
Exactly. Yeah. I still like my grade. Now that said, I don't think I've ever played this card. But I still like my grade. The black blue mill deck that makes a really big orc and does this, and I think I called out in our set review, like, this is one where I think if you catch them all, you're gonna get something really good. I've definitely been killed multiple times by surrounded by orcs coming out and getting a really big mill strategy going with the big.
Oh, I've lost to it once. I think I know at least one time where I've lost to it, right?
Yeah.
Because the person was playing like 3 copies of it, and Mouth of Sauron, and Pelargir Survivors, right? And the whole strategy was mill the person.
Yeah. In that deck, this is a playable. I can't go anywhere else than that. Like, I'd have to go in the C range. Is it on? I might even go synergy higher if that specifically you want to get into that exact version of blue black. So if you're going for that deck, which I think is a very viable deck, it's not a top deck, but if you're in blue black, that I don't mind being in that space.
Yeah.
And this is a card I actively want, and I want multiple copies. So,
I will say it. So if you are playing blue black, I do think Control is the best version of blue black, and I think the mill strategy is the best version of Control.
I agree.
Right. So yeah, I think if you do go blue black, this is a card you play, but you also need to have the supporting cards, right? You need to have Mouth of Sauron. You need to have multiple Pelargir Survivors, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
I think that the reason this win rate is low is the opposite reason of why Soothing of Smeagol is so high. Soothing of Smeagol, I think people are putting that in the right deck, and they identify that, and they're winning with it. And I think this one, still, people are probably putting it in the wrong deck, and it doesn't belong there, and therefore its win rate suffers. That would be my best guess.
Yeah, 100%.
Moving on to black, this was the first color and rarity black commons that we graded. I think we had an issue recording those grades, so they're not showing up here, but we can talk to the cards. We remember kind of what we were thinking before. So first up was Mirkwood Bats. That's the second to last worst one. I think I recall us rating this one fairly bad, but then saying it is an interesting one where if you get the right synergies going, there's something there. And I could see myself coming up on it. I remember saying that. And I think you said, "Can I interest you in the Mordor Trebuchet?" And I do think that thing is real. It's cool. I had a friend build that deck.
If you get 2 or 3 copies of this and 2 or 3 copies of Mordor Trebuchet, I mean, you're going to town. But
I don't think it helps your win rate per se, but it is a thing you can do for a reasonable low win rate deck that will win some games.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's only because, right, there's so many. I also do think for some of these black cards, they suffer because there are so many better black cards.
Yeah.
Right. There are just so many cards in this that there are the top 3 commons in black are at a 61% win rate or higher.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'll say Mirkwood Bats is still almost a 54% win rate, which is better than, a lot of the, like half of the commons in white, probably most of the commons in green. And so I think it's, there's a relative issue here, right? Like, whereas even though this is a bad card in black, it's not necessarily a bad card, right? There are just so many other things you would want to take over, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah,
and the same I think is true for Mordor Trebuchet as well. When we get to that.
Yeah, this is just it's not enough power and toughness. Its base rate isn't good enough. It has to synergize too much before it is good, and so yep.
Yeah.
Do you want to intro Mordor?
Yeah, Mordor Trebuchet. I mean, we've kind of already talked about it, I think, and this is one of those ones where I kind of said, well, hey, yeah, that synergizes really well with Mirkwood Bats, and it does. The problem is there are so many other black cards to pick, and I can just use examples of this, right? Like when almost every time I see this card, there's something I'd rather pick over, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's another black card, which is almost any other black card, because it is the worst black, quote unquote, worst black common. But at the same time, right, it really is, just that there are even other cards I'd pick over it. But, interestingly, right, like this is only a D+, right? Both of these are only a D+, right? Whereas you look at some things that are just even further down the list, and I think that speaks to really the power of black.
Yeah.
And the fact that, it's all relative, right? But they're like, if you look at green next to it, right, half of green is worse than this.
Yeah. I recall you having these like decently low, like probably not like
I think I had them in the C- range, right? I don't think I had D range on these, but I think I had them in like the C- range, and that's almost where they're at, right? They're in D+, but yeah, I think I did overestimate the synergy on both, and then again, just underestimated the fact to which there are just so many better black cards out there.
Yeah, in general, I think we essentially called these ones right, though. Okay, Sam's Desperate Rescue definitely surprised me on how good that was. We got the B- range. Again, I think this is like the Birthday Escape type of effect. It's just 1 mana Ring Tempts You is good, as long as you can get a card back of some form for it. This suffers a bit more that you can't play this early unless something's in your graveyard that you want to get back. So Birthday Escape is better, but it's not horribly far off. That's a good card. 1 mana Ring Tempt with Get Something.
Yeah, I'd actually argue in a lot of situations this can be better than Birthday Escape, right? Because Birthday Escape, you are drawing a card, but you don't know what it is.
Yep.
This, you're drawing a card, and you know what it is, and you can often get to pick what it is, especially if it's a land cycler that you want to get back. This gets back, Troll of Khazad-dûm, Oliphant, things like that you may have cycled early to get a land, and then later on you're able to get it back, get a Ring Tempt. Opponent destroys one of your creatures you want back. There's so many good uses for this, and I do think we rated it I want to say we rated it in like the low C range. I can't remember. We'd have to go back and look at the video. But I think it has surprised me. It has surprised me in its versatility.
Yeah, and I think I rated it a little lower than you. I think you were higher on this one. So, because this kind of effect does tend to be a problem when it's stuck in your hand early. Like, if you draw this in your opening hand, it's kind of rough sometimes, especially in black where you're not always aggro and losing creatures and stuff like that early. So, I judge it off of that. And I didn't judge the ring tempt. That's my my theme of the day. So, yeah, I think that covers that card.
Yeah, sure. So next up, we have Shelob's Ambush. This is, I think, another one that we rated a little too low. I think, as I recall, I might have rated it a little higher than you.
You did.
Just because I think, in general, you're not a fan of combat tricks. But I looked.
I wouldn't
at
go
this
that far,
like, well,
but yeah.
well,
I'm lower on them than you are, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you, I think, don't see them as highly, right?
Yeah.
And for me, right, I was looking just at 1 mana, Death Touch is good, right? And the bonus of a food token, the bonus of, more toughness than power just makes this a pretty solid card, right? I'm still surprised, though, that it's as high as it is. It's not quite a 60% win rate, but it's 59.9. So it's the 4th best common in the color, and I think deservedly so. It's very versatile, and you can use it in almost any situation, and it's going to give you some value. The food token is a bonus, but it's a nice bonus.
Yeah.
It's also the kind of thing where, like, hey, next turn I can, or even later this turn, I can get myself 3 life if I need it. So.
Yeah, and the prevalence of the 1/1s as well, I think really help on this one. I was viewing this card a little bit more as the blowout potential of when your opponent double blocks you, which is a thing, but that didn't really come up that much. I think this was more just there's enough incidental 1/1s around that you're fine trading this off with one of those 1/1s to kill something big. And then just the versatility, leaving 1 mana around for any type of situation where you can add the +1/+2 Death Touch. It comes up a lot.
Yeah. Or in blue-black, this is great with Pelargir Survivor, right? Because you don't even have to leave mana up. You leave your Pelargir Survivor up, and it can kill pretty much anything. So, and usually live.
Yep.
So.
Up next, we have the Black Breath. I don't remember what we gave this, but I know it was low.
Yeah.
And I think we both kind of tagged this as a card that was probably more sideboard-esque, and it just turned out there were more 1/1s around in the set than we anticipated, or X1s at least. And the Ring Tempts You is good. That combination of one-way kill all your opponent's 1/1s, the Ring Tempts You, is worth 3 mana, and comes up enough in games that you can main deck this, and therefore it's a C+. I don't doubt we at least both had this in the D range, I want to say, so we were wrong.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I still don't find this card a high pick for me, but that, I think, again, is just one of those things where there are so many good black cards,
right,
that if I'm playing black, there's usually something. I'm usually playing black because I found that black is open, and when black is open, there are things I will pick over this. Right. But I'm not unhappy if this card comes my way, and it's, I know I'm playing black, and maybe this is the only black card in a pack or something like that. I'm not going to throw it away, right? I'll play it, but I do find that it actually gets cut quite a bit from my black decks, and that's, again, usually just because I have better cards.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be unhappy with this, right? So.
Agree with everything you said, and plus you don't want this in multiples, really.
One in a deck is fine.
Yeah.
Last up, we have the Torment of Golem, and I think this is a card that I would say universally everyone has underrated. I guess I haven't seen all the other, kind of set ratings that went on, but I think it's pretty. People looked at this card and didn't necessarily think about how powerful it can be. And I dread every time I see a swamp hit the board, this getting played on turn 4 against me.
Yeah.
Right. It's so bad because at that point, you've basically what you have in your hand is going to be like your finishers, and your opponent's just going to take away your best card, and they're going to get a 2/2, and so it's anyways, what do you think though?
Agreed. I mean, I don't think most people would give this a B plus, in their grades prior to seeing it happen.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think everybody underrated this card pretty significantly.
I will say, I would like to go back to the video, but I think I gave this either a C plus or a B minus to start.
Okay.
I was still pretty high on this. Was my point. So I think I called that piece right. I think the 4 mana choose basically removal of your opponent's best card. It does suck that they didn't have to waste mana or waste a turn or whatever to play that card, right? Like a normal removal would kill. But get that, and you get board presence with a 2/2 for 4. That's pretty good, especially when you get the knowledge about your opponent's whole hand and you can play around, later. I think I kind of, in a way, called this right, but I would say it still outperformed my expectations, yes.
So moving on to red, our first card up is Breaking the Fellowship. And this is one that I can't, like, I think I got it about right. I think, I'm not sure. Our grades, I think, are a little low for where it's at. Or actually, no, it's in the C plus range, right?
Yeah.
I think our grades are a little low for it, but I'm honestly happy with that, right? Like, I still don't love this card, but the ring tempt is big, right? And that is certainly a reason to include it. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with essentially what you're saying. I think this actually is more like, if I were to grade this now, probably like a C minus. It's on still the lower ends of playable, so I kind of do think you nailed that. I do think that this benefits again from you're playing this in your ring temp decks, and if you're able to pull that off, they tend to be the better decks. So this is only being played when it is good, and it's not good on all the decks. So it doesn't make it the highest pick. Therefore, if we're putting grades based upon picks versus win rate, then picks C minus.
Yeah.
But that said, yeah, I definitely underestimated what this could do. The fact that this normally is not that great a card, in that you need your opponent to have 2 creatures out that where one could could kill the other, and then still you're killing the second best thing, right? That doesn't read as a great card. But I think 2 things going for this card is, yes, the ring tempts you, big thing, theme. But the second thing is, sometimes you don't want to kill the highest power and toughness. You want to kill their legendary ring bearer.
Yeah, you want to kill their ring bearer, right? Yeah, and this is actually decent for killing ring bearers.
Right.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Quarrel's End. I think this was another one that fits that pattern of we both underestimated it. I have to see where it is on here. Yeah, B minus. Yeah, we both underestimated it.
It's the third best common in the color, right?
Yeah.
It's surprising.
But I think we read the data and then realized that we were wrong, right? We in one of our episodes went through these cards and called out, well, Quarrel's End, that's performing quite high. Why? And then we started filtering for the different decks that it was doing well in, and it was specifically blue-red that it particularly did well in, and that was indicating this whole deck that we went a deep dive in our last episode, right? So, I also do want to mention we record the episodes quite a bit before I get around to editing and posting them. So so we called it earlier in the metagame than
then we actually made it onto
yes. But I'll work on that when I have some more time. I think I enjoy more shooting these than I do the the editing and posting. But
sure,
this is one that
I don't have to deal with the editing.
Yeah. But this is one that overperformed. What do you think?
No, 100%. Agree with everything you said. I think I rated it as a low playable. I still think it's generally that, but if you are going for that specific blue red archetype, right, that it's good, right, and you should play it. I wouldn't play it in like white red, right? Like,
Right.
I want to be more aggro, right? And this is not a particularly aggro card. Sure, you get the 1/1 board presence, but you have to discard a card. Later in the game, if your game does drag on, right, it can be good, right? Because it's one of those things like you're probably going to have an extra land in hand you can discard, and it gets you a little bit of board presence and 2 cards, right? But it's a little slow generally for a white red deck in my mind. So
Right.
I think it's limited use, but it is good, right?
Yeah, I'm not picking this as the third highest. I also think this is one of those. It's being played in the blue-red deck specifically and winning a lot from that. And uh, it's not horrible in other decks, but it won't do as well in those other decks, and people tend to not play in those other decks. Whereas other cards like Relentless Rohirrim, I think, does fit more decks.
Yes. So next up, we have Rally at the Hornburg, which we both put it in the C range, but the reality of this is the best card in the color, right? The best common in the color. It it's overperformed in so many ways. It's good in all the different archetypes, right? It's great in white red. It's great in black red. It's great in blue red, right? It's probably good in green red, but I rarely ever see anyone play green red, so I can't really say too much. But it's great in all formats, right? It's never a bad card to have. Just because at the worst you're getting 2 chump blockers for 2 mana. At the best you're getting the ability to have an aggro board presence with the haste. And I've even used this card right when playing later in the game, right, where I can play a Relentless Rohirrim, then play this and attack with the Relentless Rohirrim, which is nice. So there's numerous use cases. It's good in it, like using that quadrant theory. It's good in all 4 quadrants. It's good when you early game. It's good late game. It's good when you're ahead, and it's good when you're behind.
Because of that, the quadrant theory plus the metagame currently, I'm taking this as my number 1 common.
Period.
Yeah.
Like through the set. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, right? I would not necessarily disagree with that. I think Claim the Precious might give it a run for its money.
I hear you.
But
Yep.
I mean, it is a fantastic card. So
yeah, and that's why I said in the metagame, because black has been cut more and red has been slightly more open and fits in. I'm happy to play red with any color other than green, but that's almost every pair of colors anyway that I don't want to pair with green. Black green's okay. So in that sense, Claim the Precious it would be my number 2. But yeah.
But yeah, I'm never unhappy for this to be a pack 1 pick 1.
Yeah.
Right. Like if there are many cases where it wouldn't be for me.
Yeah.
But like if I don't see anything particular, like this is not a bad pack 1 pick 1.
The uncommons still remain the power of the set. Yeah. Like I want I want a good uncommon, but yeah,
Sure.
Seeing this, if I forget exactly where they are in the packs because I mostly play online, right? But if you see a rally in commons first, you're like, okay, at least I have a rally, sense of relief, and then you can go. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, we have Relentless Rohirrim. And yeah, this was an overperformer as well. I think another one of those where I saw the data and then came up on it. I don't think we. Yeah, okay. We have the gradies on these. Yeah, we had it as a playable, so we weren't horrible on it. Like it's understated 4/3 for 4. Sometimes you could argue that might be a D range. So I think we might have given it a little bit of the benefit with the Rings temps, but we probably seems like both underestimated still the ring tempt.
We underestimated this a lot. I think one of the reasons we underestimated is because it's a 4/3. We were like, this dies to Smite the Deathless. Yeah. There's just there's a number of ways you can get rid of this. Westfold Rider kills it. There's and that's true, right? But we underestimated the ring temp. And the real value of this is when you're using it in concert with all of the other red cards, the blue cards, the black cards, the white cards that have ring temp, and you're getting to that level 3 or 4 ring temp, 4 being obviously ideal because of the life loss. But 100%.
It's really hard to judge the synergies that a new set will have, right? But I think kind of the learning here is if you have a card that is otherwise very close to being normal statted, that is either, is what you want for that. Like either some cheap version to help that synergy, or is, even if it's expensive, is close to being statted, but has the main synergy of the feature of the set. It's probably going to be a good player. That might be the best takeaway.
100%, yeah. And I think that's true for the next one as well, right? This is one I'll take pride in saying that I called mostly right. We had a pretty significant grade difference on this one. And I mean, I think even I underrated it, right, based on the fact that it's kind of a C plus on these ratings. But I think I'll say I called it right. 1/1 menace for one on death gives you a ring temp. It's a good ring bearer because you can't block it. Unless you want to sacrifice, especially then, if you sacrifice, you'd have to sacrifice 2 creatures once you get to level 1 or level 3 ring temp, right? And I think that I might have said that in our video. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at it, but that menace ability really does matter. And the fact that if even if it dies, you're not too mad, right? Because you're getting a new ring bearer, you're going up a level in ring temp, and so yeah. Anyways.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I still would rate or pick this in my at like a C minus, like, which is admitting I'm wrong, but I still can't quite go there to like the being an actual C plus, just because I think I agree the win rate is probably a C plus, but you're putting this again in your temp decks, so you're pigeonholing if you pick it too early to be that, which might be the reason why I fail to get into the temp decks enough. Maybe I should just go all out and just assume I'm going to be temped. But if you don't get there, if tempt is cut from you, you're going to be in a harsh place playing this card. It's not the worst thing in the world, the 1/1 menace, but I will cut this if I'm not in the tempt deck.
Yeah. So kind of pairing off of what you said, about Rayleigh the Homework. This is my number one costing card in the set.
No, Birthday Escape.
Well, yeah, you're okay. Fair, right. This is my number 2 one costing card, my number one costing creature. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah.
Right. It's good, right? And I like it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I totally forgot about Birthday Escape. But
yeah. Well,
anyway.
it's still not my number 2 1 mana anything, but I'm not even sure what that one is, to be honest. Probably for me, Sam's Desperate Rescue. Shalob's Ambush is decent in there too, but I don't know. But I'll agree with the creature.
So last up in red, we have War Beast of Gorgoroth. We rated this about right, I think. But honestly, it's funny because I still don't like this card. It does overperform, and the data shows that it overperforms. But I still don't like this card. There's still a lot of cards in red that I would pick over this. And so I think this is good in the particular archetype of playing big, beefy creatures. But again, it's kind of a build-around card in that sense, right? Like, I wouldn't play this in white-red usually, because all your creatures are generally smaller and you're not getting that effect. In black-red, I could see it working out, but it's got to be the right black-red where you've got a lot of those 4-power plus creatures. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think you might still underrate just the fact that this thing is a 5/4 that when it dies still gives you a 2/2
Yes.
for 5,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
That's just quite efficient itself. I've liked this card a good amount because I haven't ended up in the ring tempt enough, so this is the power that I get when I don't end up in my ring tempt decks. I mean, I wouldn't pick it at like a B minus. This doesn't pull me into that. So again, I think this kind of maybe suffers a bit from or is pulled up by the fact that it's played in the decks where you have a mass. Black red does quite well with this type of thing. And less into your ring temp stuff. But yeah, I would now pick this as probably about like a C. So I don't think we were really that off.
Yeah.
But yeah, C minus was probably a little bit low.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, now we're gonna go into green. There's not a whole lot to say about green. It's relatively bad. So we'll be quick on this part. Probably just give like our quick 10-second take each on each one of these. Chance Met Elves. I gave Synergy C plus. You gave a C. It is D minus.
Absolutely bad.
Yeah.
Absolutely bad. It's the third worst one in the set. It is just barely above a 50% game in hand win rate. Again, I think this. We kind of thought, hey, the Scry Synergy, right? If you can pull that off and make it work, this is not a bad card in that. But turns out the Scry Synergy is the worst archetype in the set, and there's not much else to say.
Exactly. I if I'm in Scry, I think I still would play this card. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
But do you want to be in Scry?
Never.
No, that
never.
is the
Hard
last
avoid.
thing you want to be in.
All right, moving on then.
Yeah, same thing. So Elven Farsight, same thing, right? It's a hair better on the list, but it's still really bad. I rated this way too high at a C plus. Again, I think it's good in the sense that if you get that Scry combo going, it could be good. I like the idea of, hey, you get to draw a card if you put the creature on top, right? But you do have to reveal it, which is a negative. So, yeah, I mean, turns out in practice, nowhere near as good as I might have thought it was.
Disagree. Yep. Up next, probably the only one that we can really talk to as being higher than we gave it. Enraged Worn. I do like this card. It's playable in black green. That's a decent deck. Again, the ring tempts you. 4/5 trample for 5 is like Relentless Rehiram, slightly understated, but it has the rings tempt you. What do you think?
Yeah, same. Yeah, no real disagreement there. It is the best common in the color. It is, and even then, it's a 56% win rate, so it's not particularly great, right? But if you're playing green, this is the card you take. All right, so next up we have Lothlorien Lookout. This is, again, I think you called this one probably about right. Even you might have been a little high on it for how it actually plays. But, again, I was just way high for this on, the Scry combo.
Yeah.
And I don't have much else to say other than that, it's not great.
I have seen people play it. It actually kind of does the thing with like the elves and stuff.
Yes.
But there's always ways to beat that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a 1-3 for 2, right? So it's not ever terrible, kind of as we were talking about some of the others. But yeah, it's not great.
Yep. Then we have Many Partings. Okay, that one's technically higher than the one we gave it. We gave a C minus. It's a C. And I think this kind of fits into what you need to do in green if you are going to be green. You got to fix with other power somewhere. You do what green does well, and it does that thing. It's not particularly powerful card, but if you're in green, hopefully you're doing this.
Sure, 100%. And we'll get to we don't have Woe's Pathfinder on the list of ones because I think it might be one to talk about in that because it's a similar thing. It fixes you. And this is very good when you're playing the 5-color legends, archetype, which is this is probably the only set that you could, say that of, but that's an archetype, right? Where you are literally fine with playing 5 colors because you've got enough different fixers and things like that to get what you need. And you're just taking all the powerful uncommon legends and maybe a few rares you pick up across the way to just throw together a crazy deck that can somehow get the job done. And if that's the case, you want Many Partings. You want Woe's Pathfinder. But in almost no other circumstance do you even care. Yep.
I want to hear your take on the Mirkwood Spider.
Oh, Mirkwood Spider? I still like this card. I mean, a 1/1 Death Touch for 1 is good, right? And being able to give a legend Death Touch is great. But it just suffers from the fact that green is not a good color, right? And I think if green was a good color, this would be a fairly high pick in green. because of what it can do and the fact that it's a 1/1 death touch for one. But yeah.
I think the only piece you may have been wrong on is, regardless, I don't think this type of card typically pulls you into green, and that's what you're kind of indicating with the
Yes.
B minus. But I would totally see like a C plus in the future for something like this. Yeah, it in the right set.
I think in most sets this would be a C plus, right? Like, if green was a color that actually did something, and you wanted to play it, then this is not a bad one drop.
Yep. Mirror Guardian, we had as a C, and it was where?
It's kind of middle.
It is C.
Like upper middle. Yeah, it's C. So this one we got right. Again, the ring tempt, I think this is one case where we called it pretty much exactly right. The 2 toughness sucks. This dies to Golem's Bite, right? But you get something for it. You get a ring tempt. And so... anyways, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, that's really what you want. It's a 4 power thing, which does help some of the green things do care about that. The fact that it does die easily, to your point, is not as bad of a drawback because of that ring tempts you. So, yeah, we called it right on that. And then lastly, Mushroom Watchdogs. Yeah, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is another one where we called, I think, a little high, but again, it's one of those things where I think if green was a better color, this would be a higher pick, right? It's a 2/2 for 2. It has a good bonus if you're playing with food, which there are a lot of green decks play with food, right? So it's just one of those ones where I think it was largely hurt in terms of R ratings by how the archetypes played out. Like, right. This is the signature card. This and like Farthing Farmer are signature cards in the green-white archetype, but the green-white archetype's just not very good.
Yep. Nothing to add. This green pulls this down. Food pulls this down. Otherwise, this is a decent card. We might have slightly overrated it, but in a standard set, I would not call this D range. I wouldn't go any lower than like C minus. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a replacement, 2/2 for 2, right? But yeah.
Yep.
Anyways,
the only other one that I want to talk about in artifacts is Lembas. I have yet to play this one, but I think I'm wrong in that. I think I've hurt my win rate. Have you played it, and have you liked it?
I have played it a couple of times. It's not high in my play range, but yes, it is surprisingly good, right? It's one of those things where if I have to take it, I'm not mad, right? Because it's one of those things that it can insulate you a little bit from getting decked, right? If you have the mana to activate it immediately, and then your opponent can't make you mill things or can't make you do something, it protects you if the game goes long. But also just it replaces itself immediately, and it's just a retriggerable food. So it's never bad, right? And I think that's why it's kind of there in the C's. But I still don't love it. I still don't think it's particularly great. But I'll play it if I have no other choice.
Gotcha. It's your 23rd playable. I see.
yeah, it could be. Yeah, in some cases. Or if there's nothing else in the pack to take, I'll take it. And then it probably gets cut. But the rare circumstance where it doesn't, I'm not mad about it.
All right.
I will say, and I know you and I disagree about this, I'd probably put Inherited Envelope over it.
I've come up a little bit on that one. I'm not saying I have played it yet, but I've come up on it.
Where's that one on there? That's down further on the artifacts, right?
Yeah, it's D+.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas I think I've never would have rated an F. I would probably have honestly put it as a D before, and I agree with its D+ now. And in the right deck, you will want to play it, but you need to want everything about that card. You need to want to ramp. You need to want the tempt. You need to want to splash. All 3 of those things, then you can play it.
Sure. Yeah. It's very situational, but when it works, it works.
Yep. All right, I think that's our episode here for the commons. We will be back at a future week for the uncommons and potentially rares here. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Put a comment down below. Let us know what you think. And we will see you next time.
See you in the next one.